Kia ora, hello, haere mai, welcome to Upgroove and Beyond Music Aotearoa. I'm Noel Hayvice, and with me today I've got a special guest, and this is Andrew Featherstone. G'day,
Ora.
Andrew. Now, this is my first interview, so it's not going to be something incredible. It's not going to be Rick Beato or anybody like that. But, you know, we've got to start somewhere. So, Andrew's down in Wellington. He's recently just finished the Aotearoa New Zealand Battle of the Bands final here in Wellington. It was held in Wellington just last night, over 2 nights. I'm going to get Andrew to talk a bit about himself first and his journey with music, and then we'll talk about his journey with the Battle of the Bands. So, Andrew, would you like to sort of tell us a bit about yourself and how you got started in music? And
Sure. So I was born in England. My older brother was in a rock band, and they used to come rehearse in our house. Our parents were good enough to let them jam in our lounge. So when I was like 10 years old, my brother's band came in with all his mates and their Gibson SGs and their Marshalls and cranking AC/DC covers and stuff, and it was pretty mind-blowing for a little kid. I ended up getting an electric guitar, couldn't play much on it, smoke on order riff, la-di-da. Immigrated to New Zealand when I was 12, didn't play much, and then kind of gave it away a little bit, and then I was flatting, I was 18, and I had a drummer and a guitar player living with me, and one of the other flatmates bought a bass, and he couldn't play it for shit. And I ended up picking it up and picked it up pretty quick and jamming with my flatmates. So it was sort of like this default house band. And then the drummer was a proper band, and it was like a covers band, and their bass player quit. And, Andrew, you want to jump in? I'm like, fuck, I don't know what I'm doing, man. I've only been fumbling for a few weeks.
yeah,
So I got thrown in the deep end and joined this covers band, and started writing songs, and I pulled out, hey,
so
guys.
you went straight to bass, or you played some guitar first?
Not really. I mean, I dabbled as a kid on guitar, but
Right.
I really liked the bass when I picked it up. It wasn't something,
Right. Felt at home.
Yeah. And then the band I was in didn't want to play any originals, and I started writing songs. So I'm like, I'll make a new band. So I started a band called Adrenaline when I was, 19 or 20.
We're still back in England now.
No, this is all in West Auckland.
Oh, right.
So I came
you
here
were
when I was 12.
Right, I'm with you.
Yeah. So I came here when I was a kid.
And when you started this band, how old would you have been? Roughly?
19, 20, I think. Yeah.
First band?
Pretty much, apart from the covers band, which was only a few months. And I had this song called New Zealand Green. It was a bit of a comedy song, I suppose. It ended up getting a lot of airplay on BFM at the time.
Oh, cool.
And then we joined some Battle of the Bands competitions that were going on. There was a couple of different band contests at the time. And what was it? Tommy Adderley was running one at the Glue Pot. We came second place in that one. And then there was another one at Itchycoo Park in East or South Auckland, and I think we came second in that one. And then there was the West Auckland Battle of the Bands at this old pub called the Westwood Ho, which was like a West
Auckland. I think I've heard of that,
stomping
even
ground.
I've lived there for years.
Yes.
But yeah,
it was a classic, and we won.
Wow.
And
so was that just? Is that a regional one? Or just
no,
for
it was
that
just
area?
one
Like
pub, one dude running it.
Yeah,
your typical band comp.
Cool.
It didn't last very long, and we won some recording time with Phil Rudd.
Wow.
And that was the beginning.
Phil Rudd, of course, the drummer from the original drummer from AC/DC.
Yeah, no, I've had a long history with Phil since then.
Right, yeah, because he still lives here, doesn't he? Up in Tauranga, I think.
Yeah. So, kind of long story short, with Phil, I ended up recording my album there. Then later in life, I had a record label, Intergalactic Records. I was running World Battle of the Bands for a while, and there was this all-girl band from Vegas called Jaggedy Ann that joined my band comp in Los Angeles. They're amazing, quite AC/DC-like. So I signed them to my label, brought them to New Zealand, recorded the album with Phil producing. There's a lot of rock and roll stories associated with that project. But yeah, there's a lot of Phil Rudd stories. I ended up going to Vegas, meet the rest of the band a few years later. So we won this band comp, and the following year there was no Battle of the Bands of any sort in Auckland.
Right. What year are we talking now, roughly?
So we won in 1990.
Right.
And then it must be 2 years of nothing. And then I ended up thinking, shit, I could do that. That looks like fun. And I started organising lots of little local gigs and stuff. And 93, I ran my own one in the same pub at the Westwood Hub.
So this is your first, 93 is your first time to run your own Battle of the Bands, and this is just one based in that same pub at that stage.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Just there.
Just your typical
yeah.
band comp in one bar, you know. And then I did it the next year. Then I moved it around a few venues, and I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years later, I ended up having a lot of bands from outside of Auckland starting to join.
Right.
So there'd be like Hamilton bands, and then Tauranga bands, and then there was like
because obviously,
Wellington, you know.
I assume when you say there was no Battle of the Bands at that time, that would have been also in other areas, right?
Yeah, I mean, there was, as we were talking about earlier,
as well as one's in just
Benny
one pub.
Levin was a promoter for many years, and he ran a national Battle of the Bands.
That's
that was,
right,
you know,
he did.
Auckland Town Hall finals, Rothman sponsorship, and that was like a national one that was, you know, I don't know, was that 60s and 70s? It was a long time
60s
ago.
and 70s, early 70s.
Occasionally I get people messaging me saying, "Oh, my uncle won in 1972. Do you have any photos?"
Yeah, well, I'll add this bit in. My brother's band called Rat Salad, after the Black Sabbath song, they were scheduled to be in a Battle of the Bands. And I'm not sure what year, 71, 72, somewhere around there. Unfortunately, Benny Levin, I shouldn't say this, is Benny still alive?
No, he passed a long
Benny
time
told
ago.
them if they entered it, they'd win. And unfortunately, the band broke up for various reasons. So it didn't happen. But there you go. But yeah, that would have been very early 70s.
Yeah, and that was, from what I know, that was running for a long time.
Yeah.
And then I had these more and more out-of-town bands starting to join, and it was like, well, you can join, but like you got to come up for the heat, come back again for the semi.
Yeah.
And after a couple of years, I ended up doing northeast, southwest Auckland, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, different venues, and then power station finals. And so it was getting bigger, but it was still just Auckland.
So it's still just Auckland when it was the final.
And then I had more and more bands come from out of town, and I kind of thought, you know, I should be taking this to them instead of making them drive up and down.
Grow.
So then I put it in, I don't know, half a dozen centres, and then grew it. I ended up at one point I was in like every town, Whangarei to Invercargill, it was like 15 cities.
Yeah.
But sometimes it was more hassle than it was worth. There was a lot of work trying it. Some towns were pumping, and some were painfully slow. So it sort of ebbed. You know, I've grown it and shrunk it a wee bit over the years.
Yeah.
And then I started doing a lot of traveling, and I had a record label at the time, Intergalactic Records, and I signed Jaggedy Ann, 8 Foot Sativa were my biggest selling artist, and I had quite a lot of success with them. I got a gold record, and I toured them. I set up a world tour, so I got them on
a world tour. Can you believe it, folks?
It was kind of accidental. It was so how it happened.
Perhaps not the world as we know it, but Andrew might elaborate and explain on that a bit more.
Well, yeah, what happened was I got them on South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, which is like a music expo conference thing, lots of showcases, all the industry gathering. And there was a similar thing in Toronto called Canadian Music Week. And that was 2 weeks before South by Southwest. And
And is it one of those things that a lot of the bands that play at that go to that? Not necessarily.
Some were starting to, because they were close enough, and there were similar kind of things. And I got some friends in Los Angeles. I started to get some things happening there, and I ended up booking some shows in LA through. My friend helped me. We got the Whiskey A Go Go, Tower Records on Sunset, with some really cool LA gigs, and then we had the showcase in Austin and Toronto. And I rang up my travel agent at the time, and I said, "Oh, how much is it going to cost for flights to go from Auckland to LA, Toronto, and Austin and back?" It's like, well, 3,100. She goes, "Oh, you should get a round the world ticket." I had never heard of. I was like, "What? What's round the world ticket? Round the world ticket? How much is one of those?" It depends on which level, but there was this super duper version for 3,200. It's $100 more than the 3 cities. And it was 6 North American flights, 4 or 6 in Europe, 4 in Asia, 4 in Australasia, and I just went, fuck it.
So if you did that, not that we're talking about travel, but hey, this all comes into it when you want to do something like this. If you had done it individually to those countries, what would the difference in price be?
It was $100 difference in the flights. We had to pay the departure taxes and stuff on top, so it cost a little bit more. But as soon as I found out that for $100 more, I could take the band like pretty much anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And you could keep changing the itinerary until you finalised it. And
sort of open to how you could work it.
Yeah.
Sort of. Yeah.
So every time I was just like, the world was an oyster. So I'm just like spending hours and hours Googling stuff. And I ended up, there's this thing called the World Series, which was a New Zealand music industry initiative where the Music Industry Commission brought a whole lot of movers and shakers from around the world, and they had to watch like 5 nights of showcases of Kiwi bands, and they got a free holiday and a trip to Queenstown or whatever. So there was all these big shots that it was a really smart thing. We should do it again.
Was that part of the South by?
No, it was nothing to do with South by Southwest. Okay. It was a New Zealand initiative. But what happened was there was.
Is that still going?
No, 1 or 2 years I think it lasted for, and there was.
I'd heard about that somewhere.
It was very cool, and they brought over Emma Banks, who at the time was the head of the Helter Skelter agency, one of the biggest booking agents in the world, and there was a whole bunch of people, but these are the ones I remember because they're the ones that I connected with. And there's a guy, Donald Tarleton, who used to be Celine Dion's manager and concert promoter of the Stones, big shot promoter for North America. And then he'd started a record label, and there was 2 types of showcases. There was the major label acts. They had to pay $5,000 or $3,000 or $5,000, and you got your band on the major label night. And then there was like everyone else.
Wow.
And 8 Foot were like flavor of the month band at the time. And I said to him, "Oh, this is a bit fucked up. Like who cares what your label is? Like my band's selling more than these guys. I want to play on the major label thing. Oh, that'll cost you $3,000. Yeah, I never paid it." Because the whole thing about 8 Foot was like it was one of my Sex Pistols moment. It was like, the most uncommercial thing I ever worked with, outsold
It's
everything.
all right, he won't be under arrest.
Yeah, he's been a guy.
He's safe.
So I got them on this thing. It was at the St. James, I think, and Donald Tarleton, he goes, I really like this band, Andrew. I like the way he bangs his head. He looks like a seal. It was crazy. So I almost got a Canadian deal through him because of that. And Emma really liked him. And when I was putting the world tour together, I was like searching for hot gigs, and I found Soulfly, which is the Sepultura's Max Cavalier.
Is that how you say them? I've always said Sepultura.
I could be wrong. But it was his new band, and they were signed to Roadrunner, and I just licensed 8 Foot to Roadrunner Australia. And Soulfly were playing at the Astoria in London the exact same week that we were going there. And Emma had booked us at the Underworld in Camden.
Right.
And we weren't like officially represented by Helter Skelter and Emma, but she had a bit of a vibe for the band, and she kind of liked my hustle. And
nice.
So I messaged her and I said, "Emma, I see Soulfly. It's your gig." It was a Helter Skelter gig.
Oh,
and it's that week. She booked us on the Monday, and it was that Wednesday. Mate. Yeah, it was just. And I met, and she goes, "Oh, don't hold your breath, Andrew. Those guys don't decide anything till 5 minutes before they go on stage. But I'll give it a go." So I'm like, "Okay, sounds pretty unlikely." And then a few days later, she rang me up. "Hey, it's Emma from London." "Hi, Emma." "Fuck me, I don't believe it. They said, yes, you've got the gig." And I'm like,
see,
wow.
Always make the offer. You never know.
If you don't ask, you don't get.
That's right.
So that was that was like 3,000 people, famous venue in London. All the Roadrunner UK staff were there who I'd just been to see, because I ended up doing a round world trip on my own, trying to plug all this together, blah, 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 lots of long stories. But so that became the Trump gig, but we had to move the flight schedule. We had to cancel the Hong Kong gig because it didn't quite fit. This was SARS was going on. I remember going to Hong Kong. We were there for 10 hours. And everyone's hiding in the corner with masks. This is
the preempt to COVID, if you like. SARS.
That's right. It wasn't our first pandemic. So, that's kind of, I guess there's more and more things that happen to me like that where I just thought, just take the risks.
Yeah.
And go for it. And so I started traveling a lot, and I remember, I think I was in Los Angeles, and I was like, checking out all the local gigs and trying to get my head around the place. And I thought, man, I don't see why I can't run Battle of the Bands here, you know, why not? And I started to have I took my band to Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So how that started, I'm trying to put on a local concert in West Auckland in the park. And I rang up the council and I just got the big runaround, you know. It's like, Harry's, oh, you got to speak to Jimmy, he's the parks guy. And no, Jimmy's, no, you got to speak to Michael, he's the permit guy. And I was just like,
too much bureaucracy.
Yeah. So I was speaking with my uncle, and he goes, oh, you should talk to Bob Harvey, the Waitakere City Mayor. He's really approachable, really cool, really pro arts. And I'm like, oh, yeah, cool. So I ring up, can I speak to the mayor? Put you through. Oh, great. Yeah, and local musician here, I want to put on a concert in the park. Come and see me. It sounds great. So I go there and I lay down all my posters. If you don't ask,
like he was saying
earlier. This was the beginning of a big life lesson for me, because he loved what I was doing. He just went, oh, this is great. You can have any park you want. What else can I do for you?
Supporting the arts. See, that's what we want, right?
He was amazing. So I ended up, I said, well, you know, was there any funding available? Couldn't get any money out of it, but he goes, well, maybe we can help with. I said, well, I've got a lot of toll calls to make to Australia, to Asia. Yeah. Can I help? He goes, I tell you what, I'm out of the office on Tuesday. You can come in and use my office. Wow. Fuck me. So I'm like, I was pretty young. That's one of my 20s, and I'm sitting in the mayor's office, and he got his receptionist to say, Andrew, anything you want. So this was pre-internet. So we're faxing.
He must have taken over from Tim Shadbolt.
He did. That's exactly what happened. Yeah. And I sat there with my feet up on in the mayor's office, ringing up all these venues and hotels,
living the life
and hustling
before
my way.
He was really the life.
Yeah.
Why not?
So it installed the go straight to the top. Just have the balls.
It's all about networking and your connection and asking. Take a chance.
So and then there was a sister city trade mission. Guangzhou was the sister city of Waitakere City, and there was a trade mission going on. And he said, maybe we can take your band. Ooh. And I'd made a new band by this stage, and we were going to go. And some people were like, well, what are you doing? It's like all these business guys and stuff. And we're like, oh, whatever. And there was Business Development Board had some export funding, paid 50% of cost if it was deemed worthy. So we bailed up then. We got an agreement that they'd fund half the costs. Cool. And then we went chasing airlines and we faxed every single airline. Most of them didn't even reply. A couple of them, thanks, but no thanks. And then the Cathay Pacific marketing manager said, I like what you're doing here. It's like, I can't sponsor you free flights, but I'll sponsor you guys. I'll give you half price flights. I'm like, whoa. Oh, that's all right. So we got that. And the Business Development Board would only pay half of the sponsored half, but we got a couple of grand out of them. Yeah. And it wasn't really making too much sense. And then because we were playing Guangzhou with all these business guys, and then we found this, I don't know, Midem is a thing in Cannes in France. It's a bit like South by Southwest and Canadian Music Week. It's a big music conference gathering of the global industry. Midem had just branched out to start Midem Asia in Hong Kong. This is 1996. Wow. And we realized that it was the same week that we were going to go to China. So we start planning to go to Midem as well.
Wow, good networking there.
Yeah, and then it turned out that going to China was not really going to happen. It wasn't coming together, but we got our heart set on the Midem thing. We didn't get an official showcase. We went there, we gate crashed. I remember 2 bottles of
gate crashed the Midem thing?
Yeah, because we were broke musicians and we just blagged our way in. And another, shouldn't say it, but where there's a will, there's a way. So we ended up meeting a lot of movers and shakers there, and that was the first time I'd been to Asia. I loved it, and we had half-price flights, and we managed to hustle a hotel sponsorship deal that, maybe that was on the second trip. Yeah. And then the next year, 97, the Hong Kong handover concert year. The Hong Kong handover year. Yeah. So the band wasn't keen. I went there with my girlfriend at the time and just went hustling. And there was this promoter who I'd met the year before speaking on the panel. I'm like, oh, this guy's cool. You know, I bailed him out. So, there was a promoter, Andrew Bull from Arena Promotions, who was having this thing called the Hong Kong Handover Unity Concert. So it was, if anyone doesn't know, Hong Kong was leased by the British from the Chinese for 99 years, and in 97 the lease expired, and China wouldn't extend it. We're taking Hong Kong back. So it was a big historical event, and there was this
certainly was
10,000 people concert going on with Grace Jones, and Elton John was supposed to do it, but he didn't do it. Grace Jones was there. We met Robert Plant. We'll get to that. He wasn't playing, but his son was playing in a band. So anyway, I got an offer of the Unity concert, and then I met the concert promoter at a bar. He was late. It was pre-cell phones. I remember the Chinese go, hey, anyone here? Mr. Featherstone? Phone call. It's Michael, I'm running late. Oh, do you want to wait? I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll wait. Turns up, what can I do for you? I'm like, oh, just a Kiwi band looking for support gigs, you know. You got any? And he's like, oh, shit. And he's like, the only rock thing I've got is Silverchair in Manila. I'm like, totally, I can't fly you there. I can't pay, you know, no one knows who you are. I can't. I said, it's all right, we're sponsored by an airline. You know, if you give us that gig, we'll get ourselves there. So, okay, well, you'll have to get this approved by Owen Orford, their manager in Australia, their booking agent in Australia, and John Watson, their manager. I'm like, sweet, okay, I'm going after that.
As like a support for them?
Yeah. So, lots of faxes and phone calls.
Silverchair, are they Australian? Have I got this right?
Australian, and they were huge.
They were quite big.
They were globally huge. They had some really, really big hits.
Yeah.
I remember one time hearing at some APRA seminar that the majority of the money that came in from APRA that year was Daniel Johns and Neil Finn.
Daniel Johns is from Silverchair?
Yeah, those two were doing more than everyone else added together that year. So anyway, thankfully, Owen helped me. I've met Owen at Maiden the year before, actually, and we got that gig. So I came back to New Zealand, and, hey guys, I've got us two really awesome gigs, and we went back, I don't know, a couple of months later.
Yeah.
We were playing, we didn't have the money. We came up with this thing, a flying through tour. So we do Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Flying
Auckland.
On the seat of your pants?
Yeah. We'd have, I remember the posters, it was like the left side was like 3 shitty little pub gigs in Auckland, and then the right side was Hong Kong gigs, and this one was funding that one, you know.
Yeah.
And we'd ended up doing it quite a few times, and that was, you know, probably one of the best gigs of my life. I did for Silverchair in the Philippines, and that, and I loved the place.
Stage. That's a big deal, isn't it?
So that was the beginning of you know, a lot of things in Asia over the years.
Right, that was your real connection, the start of what you do later on.
Yeah, so I had this thing going on in Hong Kong where I had a lot of contacts there, and I really loved the place. So when I started World Battle of the Bands, I thought, okay, I'm going to do Los Angeles, Hong Kong, have to do Australia, because everyone's going to expect me to do Australia, being from New Zealand. So that was 2004. And then 2005, I added Singapore and the Philippines. And in 2006, I added China and Taiwan. I had got Jägermeister sponsorship. Things were getting big and complicated and expensive. And my record label was starting to do okay, but then the digital revolution came along. It took me 15 years to figure out how to sell records. And then,
was that in the early 2000s?
I guess.
Yeah.
I guess so, yeah.
When Napster first started, or a bit after that?
In 2000s, I guess. So then things started to go a bit pear-shaped, and World Battle of the Bands was sort of like doing well in some countries, other countries it was taking more work, and it was growing, and it had a lot of potential. But it was just, I was stretched like a rubber band around the globe. Yeah. And I ended up owing the tax department a whole lot of money because...
So how with this World Battle of the Bands, roughly what year was that?
This was 2004 to 2006.
Oh, so a couple of years.
Three. Yeah, and I was ready for the fourth one. I started running it.
And what are the countries again that were involved in that?
So I had it in the US, I had it in LA, then I had it in New York.
Wow.
And then I had nothing in Europe yet, but I was talking to a lot of people. I had a lot of other countries about to start rolling out. And I started to sort of twist it into a bit more of a sort of franchisey, trying to just find a person in each place. Because at first I did it all. I just literally went there, stayed in hotels, found the gigs, found the music venues, and did the same shit that I do here. And there,
he's still doing that now with the local ones.
So that's lots of long stories, all that stuff. But I've had pretty interesting life with Battle of the Bands. It's sort of taken me all around the world.
Sounds it. I'm sure there's heaps of stories. Perhaps we could go into those in another interview later. We'll be going more in depth. That's if Andrew wants to tell some of them, of course. Some of them would be perhaps not for the public. Dare I say. So that's cool. So that's quite interesting how you all got started and stuff, and you came out here when you were how old?
12.
12, yeah. So I guess this brings us to how you can sort of explain how you got going with the New Zealand or the local New Zealand Battle of the Bands. You did talk about it a bit before I was in that pub. And, perhaps a bit how long it's been going, how you've made it work for funding, if you want to talk about that, and how it basically works and is run, and then maybe a bit about how you've, I understand, used a lot of the main cities, but you've incorporated some smaller cities, and then sometimes that hasn't worked depending on.
Yeah, so
if you want
it was 93 when I started it, but there was 2 years. So at the end of World Battle of the Bands, I ended up bankrupt, and I didn't run Battle of the Bands for 2 years. That's why it's taken me 32 years to reach 30th anniversary next year. But when things came crashing down, I basically just kept running Battle of the Bands in New Zealand, and renamed it National Championship as opposed to World Battle of the Bands. I kind of put that aside. I may re go there, but I don't know. It's a lot of work. We'll see. And so it's ebbed and flowed as far as the cities. I was really keen to have it in every town, and I did have it in like Whangarei and Invercargill. I think at 15 centres was probably the most at its peak. And next year I'm actually planning to go back to some of the cities that I stopped doing it. And sometimes it was great, but sometimes it was just a lot of hard work. It wasn't enough bands, so you'd end up like with a bit of a flop of a gig. And I've got to keep venues happy. Yeah. It's kind of my job, and this is to please everybody, which is keep the venues happy, the bands happy, the audience happy, try and make it an even playing field. Yeah. Just try and, I'm just kind of like a politician in the middle of it all, trying to please all parties. But it's very important to give the venues a good night. Otherwise, they'll want the event, or they'll give me like Tuesday nights or something.
Yes.
And of course, the whole thing works better on weekend nights. So, I stopped doing it. And then the COVID years made it a little bit tricky. I did run Battle of Bands through all of the COVID years. I had to move a few dates around.
Wow. Even 2020?
Yeah, every year.
2020 when it was the first ever lockdown?
Yeah. Because
God, it's amazing.
We had a lot of gaps between our lockdowns. And it was a pain. I had to move dates a few times. I was thinking of 2020
because that first big nationwide lockdown, and then I don't think we came out of that. It was either at the end of that year or into 2021 for our first kind of, before it went back to
the exact timing, but
so
I kind of got a little bit lucky. I think the months that
I can't remember
chosen
exactly
for it worked. Yeah, I had to move a few dates.
Yeah,
we had to have the sit down, limited capacity stuff and all that crap. But then so the history of the 2 nights national finals is a funny one. So people always try and have a lot of, I don't like knocking bands out, and sometimes, you got to do it, it's a band comp, but I tend to have a lot of bands, and people give me a bit of grief sometimes. You got too many bands at the final, so it was getting bigger and bigger.
On that subject, can you just explain how it works, like how do bands enter? They have to pay an entry fee, and can you just elaborate a little bit on that?
So the bands just register on the website, battleofthebands.co.nz. I do charge them a $60 entry fee. The very early days I didn't, but I had a lot of bands drop out, cancel, not show up. And it really messed things up. I remember Maureen, bless her, rest in peace, the owner of the King's Arms, you know. I'd get called in. It'd be like going to the headmaster's office. If I had a flop, I'd give her like a massive big gig. And then if I had a flop the following Wednesday, heat 3 or something, I'd be called in.
Yeah.
Andrew, you can't run gigs like that. Yeah. And where was I going with that? Oh, so the finals. So I'd been having the finals at Power Station when it was a little bit cheaper, and then Galatos, and these kind of middle-sized, bigger venues in Auckland. And
just to explain, I don't know if we've really said that. So you'd have a Battle of the Bands in each city, and so a regional, you'd have heats, and then a semi-final and a final, and then some would go through to the national final, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So then,
just one more thing. In case you can hear some music subtly in the background there, it's probably you can barely hear it. This is the current national 2024 winner of the national Battle of the Bands called Adonai. So just letting you know.
Awesome band.
Awesome, yeah.
So Maureen from the King's Arms sat me down in one of these meetings and said, you know, we support your event through all the early rounds, and then you go and take the final to give it to someone else. It's about time. And the King's Arms was, the capacity had grown, it was going off, and they ended up saying, okay, well, we'll have the finals here. So that was that. And then Juice TV, which had been my media partner for a long, long time, they started their own venue called Juice Bar. Okay, we want to have the Battle of the Bands here. So
Where was that?
That was in Parnell.
Oh, yeah.
So I ran Battle of the Bands at both King's Arms and Juice Bar. And Juice Bar said, oh, you know, we really want the national final. We're your media partner for all these years. And I'm like, oh, I can't take it away from the King's Arms after all the history and the discussion. So I'm like, shit, what am I going to do here? So I came up with the 2 nights. It was a pain in the ass because I brought a lighting guy from Wellington, actually, with all these big setup, and we had to move it all across town and do it all the next night. But it solved sort of the politics of the 2 venues, and it also solved the problem of too many bands. I could now spread them over 2 nights. So that's what. So then, a few years later, Juice Bar closed, continued at the King's Arms while it lasted, and I had 2-night finals there. And then the COVID year, the Auckland was in a lockdown, and the rest of the country wasn't. So the bands couldn't come
poor
to
old Auckland. They
we
suffered.
copped it.
They copped it.
So the bands couldn't come to Auckland for the national final. So I'm like, shit, what are we going to do here?
That's tricky.
And I can't send the Auckland bands somewhere else because we weren't allowed out.
Yeah. They were really not only locked down, they were locked in.
So I thought, oh, well, we'll have the 2 nights, one in each city, which was a bit weird, but we did it anyway, and we pulled it off. Yeah. And Wellington had been going really well. The King's Arms was long gone. Auckland venues, I'd been chopping and changing around a bit. Thirsty Dog, Anthology Lounge, and Valhalla is my favourite local venue. It was working really well for Battle of the Bands. We'd had a string of Wellington bands win, Pale Lady, Baker's Eddy, and then later Dream State. Right. And I just thought, oh, you know, and a lot of people said to me over the years, why don't you have the final in Wellington? It's the capital, blah, blah, blah. You know, it felt like a real Jaffa saying, no, we're the real capital. So anyway, I thought, yeah, fuck it, we'll move it to Wellington. So that's the history of the 2-night thing in the national finals. Yeah.
So how long have you see you eventually decided to have the final in Wellington? How long has that happened, like in a row, that you've done